Welcome to my review of TMNT Shredder's Revenge, and this is for modern consoles. I believe this is on, Xbox, PlayStation, PC, Switch, and all that kind of shit. It's pretty much on everything. So, this is really just kind of a throwback to TMNT Turtles in Time for the Super Nintendo back in the fucking olden days, and the arcade beat-em-ups with the Turtles. There was a few of them. There was also a few on NES. So this kind of is like a throwback to all those games and has a lot of references to all those games, of course. Now, for me, this game, I thought it was solid. But for me, it's not really too replayable. I just didn't find it to be a real exciting game that I want to replay. I found that it got very monotonous and tedious. I would go through it. I went through it first on single player on the default difficulty, I believe. And, it was a 1cc run, meaning no continues used, and that was my first time playing, so it was super fucking easy the first time playing through on default. Now, I did briefly try it on the hardest setting when I started it, but I noticed that the bosses were kind of bullet spongy and took even more hits to take them out, so it just felt kind of, I don't know, it didn't feel satisfying. It just felt like they cheapened it by giving the bosses more health, basically. And the bosses already kind of take a lot of hits. It kind of feels a lot of times monotonous where you're hitting the bosses for a while and you're waiting for their iframes. Basically, you want to wait until they're vulnerable again where you can hit them again, but the signs aren't always clear when you can do damage, so you got to kind of just know it and learn it. And I was never a big fan of that type of gameplay, which a lot of beat-em-ups employ. Though I'm willing to tolerate some of that, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm kind of used to that, but I just found that they kind of just drag on. Also, it seems like you can just sit in a corner and charge up your special bars and just wait in a safe spot and then spam your power moves again and again. I saw videos of that. Now, when I beat the game, I didn't even know about that, but it seems to make to cheapen the game even further and make it something that I'd be less interested in, seeing what you can actually do. It just seems very easy to exploit in that way. And like I said, I just found the game to be pretty monotonous. Like, as I go through it moment to moment, it doesn't engage me. It feels like a lot of the same shit again and again. Same type of mobs of enemies. The crowd control. There's not a ton of moves. It just seems like, it's a lot of the same redundant enemies again and again. Which sounds like a lot of beat-em-ups, but it just doesn't feel as engaging to me as something like Streets of Rage or, the better Final Fight games. I even like TMNT 4 for Super Nintendo quite a bit better than this. I think it's a lot more enjoyable. But for whatever reason, this game, I wasn't really getting into it. Now I played through it a second time with two other players, I played through on 3-player mode, and you can play through with up to 6 players. Now I mainly did that because my friends wanted to check out the game, so I was like, fuck it, I'll play through it again. Not a big deal, but I don't know, I just found it monotonous. I just wasn't into it. Now, it wasn't bad to me or anything like that, but I just lost interest, basically, to where I didn't feel like there was a clear goal that I wanted to achieve with the game or really anything I wanted to do with it. But, that was just my take on it. Like, I just, found it kind of redundant. The game is also kind of like, overly long. It's like 2.5 hours, I think, something like that, if you don't die. Or if you don't use a continue, which is what I did. I beat it on 1cc. I think it's like 2 to 2.5 hours. And it just feels like a lot of padding to me, you know what I mean? It feels like a lot of the same shit for 2.5 hours. Now, something like Final Vendetta I liked way more than this because, now that game was only 30 minutes and I liked it way better than this because it got to the point, it was really well designed. The combat, it just felt like a lot more tactical, with the crowd control. You had your, the way you could juggle enemies and combo enemies and try to, group enemies together. It just felt a lot better to me. And it was a lot more punishing when you did fuck up. It just felt like everything felt like it had more of a meaning to it. You know what I mean? The gameplay just felt more meaningful to me. And with this, it kind of just felt like, kind of just monotonous to me. It didn't feel like there was a lot involved in the gameplay. Like I said, on normal, it was very, very easy. So that took any impact away from the gameplay for me. But with all that said, I do think that players that actually, if you like the old Turtles games, you're probably going to enjoy this quite a bit. And if you like beat 'em ups in general, if you're looking for a real kind of casual, simple beat 'em up, I don't think there's a hell of a lot of depth to this. Now, I'm sure, you could play any game on a deep level. So I'm sure there's, more that you could get out of this game if you wanted to. But I just didn't feel like it was one of those games that I'd want to invest more time into. I thought it was probably entertaining maybe the first 15 minutes, but then after that, I kind of felt like it just droned and felt like the same shit. But I think a lot of that had to do because there wasn't really any real consequences to, to the action. I mean, you didn't have to play that well to succeed. But I still think it's kind of a cool game, like I said, but it's not really one that I would see myself replaying. I probably wouldn't go back to it again. Now, in the main quest, you do have like some side missions and stuff. You can do some extra side missions, but they're basically just collecting items in the levels and then going and talking to a person in the Super Mario Bros. 3 style overworld map, which is just a map you move around. You can't actually do anything in the map, but you just move around to get from place to place. And you can deliver certain things that you collected in the side missions. It's basically like just collecting shit that you find in the environment. Very simple. And you do get some kind of bonus for doing that. I forgot what the bonus was. In the story mode, you do have some kind of upgrades that you can unlock. Your character does level up with XP. So that is, kind of a cool little thing that's added in. But it wasn't done in a real satisfying kind of progression, such as River City Girls, which was really well done. That was a more recent beat 'em up. I think it might even be by the same company. That was implemented much better with the stuff that you unlocked. It was a lot more meaningful. That game was just a lot more enjoyable. If I look at another game that this company made, Streets of Rage 4, that game fucking blows this away for me. I mean, that game was fucking awesome. And it just felt, the combat was a lot more satisfying, challenging. It didn't drag on. It just felt like every encounter felt, much more satisfying, like you had to really focus on what was going on. I feel like this just becomes just boring after a while. And it doesn't, take long for it to kind of drone. But I know some people love this game. Like my friends that I played with, they thought this shit was great. But, for me, I thought it was okay. Like I think it's, I don't think it's badly made or anything, but I just don't think it doesn't have the kind of engaging gameplay that would be addictive for me that I would want to keep playing it beyond my first playthrough. Like I said, after 15 or 20 minutes, I was like, okay, I get the idea of this, but it's not really engaging me. But I did sit through it because, I always like fucking increasing the kill list and beating more games. So, I will sit through games even if I don't really enjoy them that much sometimes. But it wasn't like I was having a bad time. I mean, I was still having kind of a decent time, but I was just got kind of restless and bored with the game. And it did drone on for me. And then when I played through it again with, 2 more players, it was like the same shit again. It was a little bit more enjoyable the second time through. But it felt pretty mindless because with 2 other players, it's even harder to see what the fuck is going on. So with 6 players, if you have 5 other players, you get, 6 players total. I can imagine it must be really fucking chaotic, and I can't imagine it would be that much more enjoyable. Now, I think it does scale depending on the amount of players. I think the difficulty may scale. So bosses probably become tankier with more players and, can absorb more damage, but I don't know. For me, that's not really an incentive to play with more players. I mean, it just seems like it would be a mess. But I think this could be a fun, casual game if you just have some, multiple players over at the house. You just want to fuck around, something to play through. I think it can be kind of fun, but I couldn't see myself getting into this, heavily or taking it too seriously. So for me, it definitely lacks. But as far as the art style and all that shit, it matches up with the source material. So if you're really into that, it's probably going to get extra points for you, I don't really give a shit one way or the other. I mean, I like good gameplay. The art style, not really something I'm big into. I mean, I like the old Turtles games and shit, so I like the old art style better than this, though. This kind of has like a little bit of a cuter look, I guess, but I mean, it looks good enough. I don't have a problem with that. But it just doesn't hold up for me overall. So for me, it's going to be a 6.5 out of 10. I think it's a decent game, but it's not going to hold up. It doesn't hold up well for me, long term, like something I'd want to replay. But I still think it's a well-made game, and I think there's going to be players that enjoy it a lot more than I did. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.